Hello and welcome. It's a pleasure having you all here. We are live from the brand new offices in Oslo. As you can see behind me here, we have the new location. As you all know, sustainability is important in today's society, and it walks hand in hand with digitization and technology. We in Netcompany want to contribute to this going in the right direction and putting a greater focus on this topic and always keeping it in our mind when developing critical solutions. As a leading company for digitization in the society, it's important to think about the environmental footprint while doing so. And we also have a great responsibility for designing a sustainable future. So that's why we are working hard to find innovative and applicable solutions that are all contributing to solving UN Sustainable Development Goals, hopefully giving all of us a better future. So about me, my name is Ådne Eide Stavseng. I started working in Netcompany last fall, and I have an education in computer engineering. And currently I'm working here as an IT consultant at the Norwegian office. And with us today, we have two talented speakers who will both dive into very interesting topics within sustainable technology. First out, we have Markus Johansen Sørem, who will give an introduction on digital waste. And he will focus on how can IT be more sustainable. He was inspired last year after attending a seminar at a conference called Y-Oslo, where Gerry McGovern, who's a profiled speaker and author on topics within digital waste, held a speech on this. And in this Tech Talk, Markus will continue this conversation along with some very interesting stats and viewpoints. And next up after that, we have Mie Kristensen. Nabohjelp, which directly translates to neighbor help, is an application developed by Netcompany, where Consultant Mie Kristensen is involved. This app is a simple solution for either asking for or offering help to your neighborhood, and it's a simple and effective way to connect the neighborhoods together. Miya will go a little bit into how the app is a great example on how technology can be used to promote sustainability, and will also go deeper into the topic of sharing economy. Now, before giving the word over to our speakers, I would like to give a short introduction to Netcompany. Netcompany was founded in year 2000, and today it's the fastest growing and most successful IT service company in the Nordics. We have more than 3,000 employees and offices in 6 different countries, and we're aiming to become a leader in the Northern European market. We work hard, we're committed to leading the way in today's market, and we want to show how digital transformation can create a strong and sustainable societies, along with successful companies and better lives for all of us. We like to work in teams here at Netcompany, and we know what it takes to build, operate, and maintain different important IT solutions across all sectors and industries. We strive to constantly challenge and innovate, and we want to ensure that the development and operation teams work hand in hand to ensure great stability and speed of our systems. And in Netcompany, every project here is led by managers with strong IT backgrounds. This secures that they have the experience and competence to make right calls, guiding the teams in the right directions, and ensuring proper quality throughout all the projects we take on. So, in short, we believe that IT people lead IT people is a good solution. And we also aim to create the digital winners of the future. That's our main goal here. So now over to our first speaker, we have Markus. So the stage is yours.
Thank you, Ådne, for that nice introduction. All right, let me just share my presentation. All right. So so my talk is called Digital Waste. How can IT be more sustainable? And this talk is meant to build awareness on the impacts that us as IT professionals have on the might have on the environment, and what we can do to be more sustainable. First, I want to introduce myself. So my name is Markus Sørem. I work as an interaction designer at Netcompany, and I've been working here for 3 years. The current project I'm working on is at a customer called Telia, which is one of Europe's biggest TV and communications company. So the structure of my talk today is that I want to start off by showcasing what inspired me to make this talk. Then I want to show you some hard facts and statistics on why we should care about sustainability in tech. And then I will give you some actions or practical tips on what you can do to be more sustainable. And then I will show some examples of what others are doing, and also give you tips on a tool that you can use to measure your carbon footprint if you have a website, or you can measure any other website. And then I will round off if you have some questions. Right. So I was inspired to make this talk by, as Ådne said, I went to Y-Oslo conference last year, and there I saw this speaker called Gerry McGovern, and he has he's most famous for something called top tasks, which is how you in designing tech, you should always consider the top tasks that the end user will want to do on your website or application. So, but he's also been involved with sustainability in the later years. I have a quote from him: "Used wisely, digital could be saving our planet, making things more productive and efficient and environmentally friendly, while also improving living standards." And this is kind of what we think about when we think about digitalization and what tech can bring to our lives. But Gerry also says that it has a backside. Right now, however, digital is killing our planet, creating enormous quantities of physical and data waste, and generating more and more useless innovation. So while tech can build more productive and efficient lives and futures, it's only if we do it the right way. We have become addicts to convenience and speed. So this is the traditional way of looking at user-centered design, where you prioritize the user, the end user, in whatever you're doing. And like me as a designer, I should not be making stuff only for my customer or the organization I'm working for. And I should most definitely not be building stuff only for my own benefit, like for my own portfolio or, So I should always be focusing on the end user. But Gerry says that we should also be thinking about the Earth experience, and maybe take a step back, thinking about, should we really do this solution at all? Is the Earth any better off if we don't do it, or can we do it in a different way that might benefit Earth more? So, and Gerry also has this idea of finding the digital bike. So if you imagine that you're traveling 10 kilometers, then you would spend some CO2 by just walking. But if you drove a car, especially a normal car, then you would spend 25 times that CO2. But if you used a bike, then it would be more efficient than walking. So we should be finding these digital bikes in our innovations and tech solutions. And why should we care about this? So this is a chart that shows all the CO2 pollution that humankind has ever been responsible of putting out or polluting. So you see that between 1995 and 2020, we have had half of all the pollution that humankind has ever let out. So if we keep going with this rate, we will make enormous amounts of CO2 pollution. And this is a chart showcasing the amount of data that we're creating. In 2010, this amount was 2 zettabytes, which is 2 billion terabytes. And if we think about last year, it was 47 zettabytes. And this company, Statista, has actually predicted what, with today's growth, what will the case be in the future? So in 9 years, we could be making 612 zettabytes. And by 5 years later, the number will be over 2,000. So we see that our data creation is about to explode. So it is important that we think about how we create data and if we're and how we conserve this data, or should we maybe look into deleting most of it? Maybe we don't need all that data. Okay, so 90% of data is never used again after 3 months. So looking at the last chart, that's kind of, it doesn't make sense to create all that data if it's not used. 90% of data that we collect is never analyzed. So when companies say that they're collecting data to give you a better user experience, some people have actually found out that this might not be the case, that 90% is never used. 80% of all apps are never used again after 3 months. So you're making a free app and you're trying to make as many people as possible download this app. But some data shows that most of apps are never used again after 3 months. And the ICT industry, the information and communication technology industry, produces 830 million ton CO2 each year. So that's a quite big number, but what does it mean? So it's about 2% of the global CO2 emission. And it's in the same proportion as the aviation industry. So I think when we think about CO2 and polluting and sustainability, we often think about the flight or aviation industry, but we're not really aware that IT might be letting out as much as the aviation industry. Right. So there's about 1 million new internet users every day. And this fact, I was kind of unsure if was real, because it seems so, it seems so extreme. But there's actually 4.7 new internet users each year, and that is approximately 1 million new users every day. JavaScript usage has gone up 600% between 2011 and 2019. So I know that sometimes when you use JavaScript, you're only using a small portion of like a framework, for example. So maybe we should look into if we can only, if we're only using a small portion, we might not need all that JavaScript that comes from frameworks, for example. Because sometimes when you use frameworks, when you use a small portion of a framework, you're also forcing your end user to download all the code that's not used. And custom fonts usage has gone up 850% between 2011 and 2018. So custom fonts are, the opposite is system fonts. So that's fonts that's mostly included in most smartphones and computers. But if you use a custom font, you're forcing your users to download a certain font just to be able to view your creations. Right. So there's 3,000 times more CO2 with cloud-based storage compared to local-based storage. So if you're just aware of these things, then we might just take some small steps that can actually make a big difference. And there's 150 times less energy wasted with archival-based cloud storage. So if we're yeah, so we might look into switching to archival-based cloud storage if that's possible in our solutions. Might make sense. All right, so if you look at data transfer, if you use a cabled or wired connection, then you're using a certain amount of energy or letting out some CO2. But if you're using a wireless connection or Wi-Fi, then you're letting out twice that amount. And if you're using 3G or 4G, it's 45 times that amount. And 5G is 150 times the amount of a wired connection. So while we're all very interested in like new innovations and new tech, we should also be thinking about the impacts it can have on the environment. And if you want to say, oh, thanks for the message, the most efficient way is to use an SMS message. If you actually record yourself with a really good camera, then you might use 82,000 times the amount of CO2. And if you have a conversation between two people, the most efficient way of having that conversation is, as you might have guessed, the sound. If you use sound and a really good video resolution, yeah, you will use 1.35 gigabytes of resources, while sound only can use only 36 megabytes. So there's been a trend lately to have heavier and heavier websites every year. In 2005, the average website was 400 kilobytes. And by last year, it was 4 megabytes. All right, so 20% of all the energy in the US is so-called vampire energy, which is from devices that are always turned on. And I want to give you some examples from real life. So this is from an office that I used to work at. In this office, there was hanging these monitors around, showcasing the statistics of all the projects. But the thing was, when I had some late nights, I was sitting at the office, I noticed that these devices were never turned off. So I was kind of yeah, I was yeah, and in some nights I actually turn them off myself, and I came to work at the day after, and I noticed some people were kind of wondering if the screens were broken because they were turned off when they arrived to work. But we should really consider, do we really need this convenience of having all these devices turned on if we can just have a timer or have some solution that can just, yeah, it just makes everything more yeah, efficient and less wasteful. And this is another example from a project that I was in. Well, this is kind of a joke picture, but yeah, this person is using 4 monitors, and one is a really big one. And while this is kind of a joke, then some people really like to use a lot of monitors in their office setup. And for some people, that might make sense if they're reading a lot of text or having a lot of incident report, for example. But we should really consider, do we need all these devices running at the same time? Yeah. And other actions you can take: turn off your devices when they're not in use, use smaller and fewer screens. And if you try to use video to just greet people at the start of meetings, but then you turn it off, you can save, well, 1,000 times more energy. So I know it's really important to have video calls when you're at your home office, but you should really consider, do I need this to have my webcam on all the time if someone's having a presentation, for example? And you shouldn't record meetings. I know this was like a trend at the start of yeah, the Corona times, as I call it, but there's no point in recording meetings. If someone can't join your meetings, then they should be given like a report on a textual report, or you can brief them at the start of next meetings. I don't think most recorded meetings are ever viewed again. after some time. And you should try to save locally if you dare. I still use cloud storage for for design files, but you should consider if you can, it's really more efficient to save stuff locally. Other actions. You should only collect necessary data. You shouldn't collect data just because you think, oh, it's a nice to have kind of thing, but really consider, do we really need to collect this data? And you should also consider deleting it after a while. Use design systems and reusable components. So this is a nice trend that's been happening last 5-10 years, that everybody wants design systems. And while it can make our lives more convenient as designers and developers, it can also benefit the environment, because you're not spending all those resources and people making the same stuff all over again. And you can just host the same components in one place, and everyone can benefit from reusing stuff. Only make what you know that your end users want. So do your research, user test, and figure out that you're making stuff you know people want to use. Don't demand that your users have the latest technology when they're using your creations. So you should be backwards compatible. Don't force people to have the latest and greatest phone or operating system. This is also a really good, just a really good thing to have for accessibility wise. Use sensible formats and sizes for graphics. I know it's really tempting to save stuff in as higher quality as you can, but there is a certain point that the human eye can't detect more quality. So you shouldn't just be saving stuff because in a higher format just because you can, because that really ends up being a big waste if you're saving stuff in larger files than they have to be. Use vector graphics over bitmap. So vector graphics are like SVG, and they're actually code. So it's lighter to have them than pictures. Bitmap pictures, which are like JPEG and PNG. And also for text, use like HTML instead of PDF. Aim to make long-lasting solutions. Think that your solution should survive 10 years of time. So don't fall into the temptation of using the latest and greatest design trends or the latest front-end framework. You should think that your solution should survive some years in the long run. All right, challenge the status quo of your team. You can actually ask your team, maybe we should consider using a different storage solution that's more sustainable. All right. Other actions, make sure you have good information architecture. So make sure that people can find stuff on your website or your application fast, and that they don't have to look around. So make sure you do some work with your information architecture. This can also have a good, end up in a good user experience as well. And you can consider, can the same message come across without using all those pictures and videos? And design for lazy loading of content. So lazy loading means that only when a person is scrolling to a certain point of a website, for example, then that content is loading in. So you don't have to load all the content at first when they open the website. So you only load it when they need it. And that's a really good sustainable thing. Use system fonts when you can. And do we need all that fancy JavaScript functionality? Do we need all those fancy animations, or can we just make stuff simple and easy to use? And test and delete. Test, or if you have evidence that some of your functionality is never used, then you can maybe just try to remove them and see if anyone misses it. But you should have some evidence that no one's using it. All right. So these are some inspirations or examples. Nordea Wallet is an app where you can see what your shopping behavior amounts up in CO2 usage. So they're using the Åland index, which is a Swedish index concerned with the CO2 usage of different products. So by seeing this, if you have some shopping behavior that's red, if you're seeing that, oh, I'm using too much CO2 in this field, and if I take some actions, then I can be more sustainable. So they're just giving you this information. And this is a different example. It's not a real example, but it's a normal e-commerce or online shopping experience. So they oftentimes the online shops, they want to give you the most expensive shipping package, but maybe they can nudge them into taking greener choices, like flipping it around, giving you the green option, which is cheaper for you, but it takes longer time because it's not an express shipment. So if we think about making these small adjustments in our design and what we do, so maybe we can have a greater impact or less impact on the environment. All right, so Folkehelseinstituttet, which is the Norwegian Folk Health Institute, they won the greenest website of 2020. And they did this by deleting 25% of their website, which is quite a lot. And they have strong routines for maintaining their website. All the outdated information is either deleted or updated to a new version. And they also prioritize the top tasks of the site visitors. All right, so this is a tool you can use to measure your carbon footprint if you have a website. And so you just put your URL into this website, and then you can get like a reading. And I did this to the Netcompany NO page. And they showed us that, oh, we're actually dirtier than 85% of the pages that have been tested. And every time someone uses this website, 2.9 grams of CO2 is produced. So, and I tested this on the Norway's greenest website, the FOE, and they're more on the green scale of things. So this web page is cleaner than 61% of the pages that have been tested and have only 0.6 grams of CO2, which is produced. And I also tested this on NetLife Consulting, which was hosting the event that I went to. And they have done some actions on their website, which shows that they're in the more green part of websites. So we should all be looking into how we can make our solutions more green, more sustainable. And this website also gives you some tips on how you can be more sustainable. You can switch to a green host. So there's a lot of like data hosts out there, but only some are like certified to be green or sustainable. And you can make your website more efficient by removing stuff or making it lighter, use less videos or images. And you can plant trees, but that's not something we can do as tech people, I guess. All right, so summary. IT can be more sustainable if we only care and if we do the right things. Reuse, test, delete, and take smart choices. Think about the Earth experience. A cleaner solution oftentimes means a more user-friendly solution as well. Only collect necessary information. Find the digital bikes. All right, so some of the sources that I used for this talk, and then I'm going to see if there's any questions and if I can answer them. All right, so I see that Ådne helped Nikolai out. If you have any questions, yeah, drop it in the question page or question thing on this on Livestorm, and I will give the word over to Miya, which is talking about Nabohjelp.
Thank you for a very insightful presentation, Markus. I definitely learned some things that I wasn't aware of before. Definitely some harsh truths. But yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. So my name is Miya, and I am a UX and UI designer in Netcompany. I have been here since August 2020, and I have a master's degree in interaction design and also a short background in computer engineering. So I am currently with our customer OBOS, more specifically their Nabohjelp project, which I am here to talk about today. I will also be talking about some other sustainability-related topics that we will get to shortly. So, Nabohjelp, directly translated neighbor help. Doesn't sound that good, but there it is. So this is a mobile application, and it's developed for both iOS and Android. We're a small team. We have one iOS developer and one Android developer, and then there's me as a designer. And this project was launched by OBOS in May 2017. So as you may or may not know, OBOS is the largest housing developer in Norway. And they have this vision, which is kind of to build the society of the future, and in doing so, also fulfilling housing dreams. But then this is about so much more than just setting up a high-quality building. It's also about developing and establishing ideal and sustainable neighborhoods, as well as societies. So OBOS kind of wishes to create more life between the homes, as well as increasing the focus on sustainability, and of course encouraging a reduction in consumption. So Nabohjelp can kind of be seen as a means of fulfilling or enhancing this vision. So it's a project that puts sustainability on the agenda, and that is supposed to create real value for people. So these are the main 4 reasons that OBOS wanted to develop Nabohjelp. So as I kind of mentioned, they want to create better places to live, and not just in the home, but outside of it as well. They want us to utilize common resources. And as mentioned, they want to put sustainability on the agenda. And they want us to get to know our neighbors, create a more social environment with a greater focus on sustainable or green living. Who is Nabohjelp for? So in theory, it's basically for anyone and everyone, or at least those who have a neighbor. In practice, it's, well, anyone under 15 are required to have parental permission, but this is just due to some Norwegian regulations regarding youth work. But anyone above 15 can just sign up instantly. Anyway, the app is especially popular among young adults. As you can see in the chart, around 25 to 44 is our largest user base. But we do have users of all ages, and today we have close to 160,000 users. And the app is most popular in the larger Norwegian cities, especially Oslo, but also Bergen and Trondheim. So what does Nobel actually do? So the key functionality or the primary function is to make it easier to ask for or to offer help within neighborhoods. And this could be basically anything. The list is actually very long, but just to mention a few examples, you can ask for help with various services, such as walking your neighbor's dog or babysitting. You can borrow tools or other assets. You can give away or donate or sell used items, so reuse. And last year, we also launched a new functionality called Lost and Found. And this is meant to make it easier to locate the things that you have kind of lost in the wild, like if you lose your wallet or your keys or outside. Anyone with the Nabohjelp app can mark these items in a map, and you can locate them easier instead of having to purchase something new. So Nabohjelp is kind of all about helping your neighbors in one way or another. And it's also meant as a tool to sort of enhance the social interaction between the peers in the neighborhoods. So why sustainability? So I am, as you may have guessed, I'm not an expert in sustainability, but none of us have to be in order to contribute to greener choices. So before we delve further into Nabohjelp, I'm just going to briefly go through like why a greater focus on sustainability is important and, in my opinion, even necessary. So as you know, many of the Earth's resources are finite in limited numbers, for instance, minerals, ores, and so on. But luckily for us, many also regenerate, and these are called the ecological or natural resources. So Earth Overshoot Day is a concept that takes into consideration the consumption of the Earth's population as a whole, and that it sets or kind of estimates a date when humanity's demand for these ecological resources and services in a given year exceeds what the Earth is able to produce or regenerate in that specific year. So last year, this date fell on August 22nd. So it's a little more than halfway through the year. It's not too bad, but it could definitely be better. Now, Country Overshoot Day is the exact same concept, but it considers the consumption of each separate country instead of the planet as a whole. And Norway is one of the countries with the highest consumption of materials per person. Shame on us. So if the world's population had the same level of consumption as us Norwegians, the Earth's resources for 2021 would actually have been spent by the 12th of April. And this is, in my opinion, quite extreme. That date passed a little more than a month ago. So we're not the only ones like high up on this list, along with many other countries. We are, to a large extent, a consumer society, and we're highly driven by consumerism and overconsumption. So in my opinion, it's actually quite obvious that we need to reduce our material footprint in order to achieve a more sustainable way of living. So that we don't kind of compromise or even ruin the prosperity of our future generations. So before we delve into more Nabohjelp related stuff, I'm just going to quickly go through some very boring topics, which is economic models. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. But here it's important to remember two perspectives. We have the consumers and the producers, and both have an important role to play. So linear economy is kind of the traditional market economy, and it's characterized by the production of goods following this kind of straight line. So this means little to no reuse or recycling. So resources are extracted, products are produced and consumed and then disposed of. And this is a very wasteful approach. And according to SNL, here in Norway, only about 2.4% of materials are recycled back into the economy today, which is not a lot. So to sort of replace this linear model, a circular approach has been introduced. This can kind of be viewed as the opposite to the linear approach. So instead of the straight line, we have a circle, and it's can be viewed as a kind of ecosystem. And this model seeks to maximize the circulation of things, like resources, products, and so on, at the same time generating as little waste as possible. So it sort of keeps to, or aims to keep all the resources within this kind of looped ecosystem, and for as long as possible. And this is by reusing materials over and over again, whether this is through recycling or simply through repair and reuse. And then finally, the models that are mostly relevant for Nabohjelp. We have secondhand economy, and this is, of course, about the secondhand use of things. So reuse from one person to another. And then there's the sharing economy, which is steadily becoming more popular and is kind of a big deal in Nabohjelp. So as you probably know, sharing economy refers to this model that allows for sharing of things or resources by multiple people. So the consumers here have the opportunity to borrow or even rent or buy used or shared assets or services from other people. It is kind of the idea that ownership becomes unnecessary as long as one has quick and easy access to all the things or goods or services that one needs. So it's not really about whether you should rent or own something, but it's about utilizing assets more efficiently and sustainably. And I'm sure many of us, either individuals or companies, have things lying around that we rarely use. And this could be tools or camping equipment or cars or anything. And in these cases where we have things that we don't really utilize, it would actually typically be beneficial to rent them instead rather than own them. And this is speaking from both a financial and a sustainable or environmental perspective. But the concept of sharing economy is definitely not new. So where has this sudden new focus come from? And this is where the digital technology comes in and plays a huge role, because this new technology allows for kind of greater opportunities in coordinating, these kind of sharing platforms or services. Just to mention an example, like we have access to digital maps or payment services, social media, and so on. So one can kind of say that this technology essentially constitutes the infrastructure for this kind of sharing economy services like Nabohjelp. So coordinated by this technology, anyone can now share their property or car or tools, skills, and so on. So we now have a much larger availability and efficiency than ever before, thanks to this technology. And yeah, just to clarify, circular economy and sharing economy are not automatically created at the same time. They are not dependent, but they can and very much should be complementary, because they are quite similar and they do support each other. So a few benefits of these more sustainable economic models. So by sharing and reusing more, we can save both time and resources and money, and thereby we kind of save the environment from unnecessary material consumption. And this helps preventing us from running out of resources. So with this, we can achieve both social and environmental benefits, and of course, saving money. So it's more sustainable and cheaper. But of course, like most other things, there are some challenges here as well. For instance, it is difficult to change old habits. and many are therefore kind of reluctant to change their ways. And many kind of think of a change in this consumption pattern as like they think that this means a poorer standard of living, but this is not necessarily true. But the reason, according to Science Norway, that the sharing economy hasn't really taken hold here is that people might not really know that much about it. And of course, people are still interested in owning their own things. And to be honest, I really, I can see why they do. It's a very Norwegian thing, in my opinion. And yeah, I can understand the need. And yeah, just to mention as well, food waste is another huge problem. And it's said that about 1/3 of the world's produced food reserves are being thrown away every year, which is very bad. So in order to kind of change these things, I simply believe it's important to spread awareness and to educate both ourselves as well as others. And a change in mindset might be necessary here. Perhaps from ownership to access, or simply pay more attention to the leftovers in the fridge. But of course, this goes beyond the consumers themselves. It's definitely not just up to us as individuals, but it's also up to governments and companies to participate and somehow regulate or encourage these types of sustainable things. And in regards to sharing economy, there has been some other barriers and factors of motivation identified as well. So these are typically related to trust, as well as motivations such as economic and social benefits. But right now I would like to talk just a little bit about trust. Because when it comes to technologies that facilitate a form of sharing economy like Nabohjelp, trust plays a major role. And according to Sintef, who did this report on Nabohjelp, which is super nice, you can Google it if you want to, it's very insightful. So according to them, trust can actually be kind of viewed as the currency of sharing economy, and establishing trust is very, very important here because like in sharing economy, borrowing or renting things to essentially strangers can understandably be considered as a risk. And one needs to be certain that like this person is going to actually return your item, or maybe that it's insured if it should break and so on. So in other words, we have to reduce the risk. So with sharing economy platforms, there are typically certain mechanisms introduced that enforce trust. And this could be like a deposit system or insurance as mentioned, but also review or rating systems are very common. Yeah, just things that assures the users that there's little to no risk involved. And when it comes to Nabohjelp, we kind of support one main trust mechanism, which is the prevention of fake profiles. And this is either through user verification or through platform moderation. But apart from this, Nabohjelp doesn't actually really utilize any other typical mechanisms of trust, which can be viewed as kind of strange to some, but we have some additional factors that actually play a role here and are believed to enhance trust in Nabohjelp. Number one being that Nabohjelp is delivered by OBOS, which, as mentioned, is a large and trusted organization here in Norway. And two, the fact that the people you engage with, they aren't typically seen as strangers because they are in fact your neighbors. They live close to you, and there's a chance you can bump into them on the street or in the grocery store and so on. So this is kind of a very important distinction in Nabohjelp. The users are your neighbors and not necessarily strangers, even though you might not know them that well or at all. So as you might kind of already have concluded in your own mind, how does Nabohjelp contribute to this sustainability thing? So Nabohjelp contributes to a greater focus on sustainability by kind of combining both sharing and secondhand economy. And with this, Nobel also actually contributes to some of the United Nations sustainability goals, and more specifically goal 11, which is, well, simply put, about sustainable cities and local communities. And if we want to be even more specific, we can look at sub-goal 11.6, which is basically just about reducing the cities and local communities' negative effect on the environment, measured per citizen. So yeah, Nabohjelp is specifically designed for sharing in neighborhoods. And this is actually a feature we're currently working on improving. So if you want, you can stay tuned for the future, because there's a new release probably coming up in, well, still quite a while, but it's quite exciting in our opinion. But Nobel, we're not alone in this market, and we might just be one step in the right direction. But we can save you both time and money while still kind of facilitating greener and more sustainable choices. And it's also, of course, great for the environment, great for our wallets. Here's just some Norwegian examples. Sorry about that, but I will translate them quickly for you. So through Nabohjelp, about or over 1,800 people have actually refurbished their apartment or house using a borrowed drill. Over 2,000 projects have been completed using a borrowed saw. Nearly 4,000 events have been arranged using borrowed chairs. This is very popular in Nobel, borrowing chairs. Over 1,000 moving boxes have been utilized, secondhand, of course. Over 700 furniture or walls have been painted with leftover paint scraps. Over 300 camping trips have been made or completed using a borrowed tent. And lately, in these Corona times, as Markus called it, we have had a spike in people asking to borrow or trade board games or jigsaw puzzles. So there's been like over 500 posts asking about those kind of things lately. Some Norwegian kind of reviews, positive reviews from our users. We have some food saving, people getting a whole box of apples from their neighbor. Another person just experiencing some great service from another neighbor doing a lot of work for them. And one person thinking that Nabohjelp contributes to a kind of greener future. As I mentioned, Nabohjelp is not alone here, and the focus on reuse and reduced consumption is larger than ever before. And of course, there are other great platforms out there contributing to this, such as Finn or Theis, Nabohjelp, and so on. There's some examples up here. And Airbnb and Uber are actually the largest kind of companies in this market, but they might be a little more commercial than some of the others here. And we also have apps such as Too Good To Go and Certain that greatly encourage reduction in food waste. So kind of by utilizing these solutions, we can increase the lifespan of existing products and resources and thereby prevent waste. And like by doing these things, we are contributing to a more circular economy. So just to quickly round up, how can we as consumers, what can we do to help? You can, of course, start by downloading Nabohjelp if you want. You can also consider renting or shopping secondhand instead of buying new things. And instead of throwing things away, you can try to donate them or give them away or sell them. And of course, try to reuse and repair your things that might be perfectly good. Or if, of course, you have something that's entirely broken or whatever, you should at least try to recycle it. These are all things that I believe that are not that difficult to do. And I believe we can all make at least a small change here. Yeah, so with that, I kind of wish to conclude this topic, and I wish to thank you all for listening in and attending. And I am going to give the word back to Ådne just to round off the show, and I wish you all a great evening.
And also thank you both for a great presentation on two really interesting topics. And as a viewer, if you found this exciting and maybe you want to know more about our company regarding both social activities and our workplace in general, or maybe you want to explore opportunities, just feel free to follow us on different social medias. You can see them here on the screen. We're both on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And of course, you can find more information on our website. So hopefully you found this as cool as I did. And thank you for tuning in and have a great evening. Bye.